when I was a little boy, my dad and my family, we moved out of this neighborhood into kind of in like the boondocks.
Yeah.
We were surrounded by cornfields.
Indiana.
In Indiana.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my dad was always he was a bodybuilder for years.
Oh, he was.
Weightlifting fanatic, martial arts fanatic, my whole life. Even, long before I was born, my dad was, he was heavily involved in lifting weights and martial arts. So
did he ever compete in bodybuilding?
Yeah.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. He competed in bodybuilding.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got like a big first place trophy.
Really?
Yeah, at our house.
What did he win? Do you remember what he won?
Mr. Indiana.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I think that's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he was super into it for a long time. And so we moved into this house when I was like 5, 6 years old. And my dad had a little like pole barn built in the backyard, just to make his own like home gym. He always wanted his own gym.
Yeah.
And, so he put, the weights back there. He put a mat space, hung a heavy bag, all that stuff. And then he and his buddies, they all started training out there on the weekends, and they were training, boxing, kickboxing, Jiu Jitsu. This is right around the time that like UFC was starting to blow up.
Right. And right now you are 32.
I'm 32.
32. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And this was all when I was like, 7, 8, 9 years old.
Yeah.
And, so this barn that my dad had built, it's very rugged, doesn't have air conditioner, doesn't have, doesn't have heat in the wintertime. So it's like in the wintertime, it's freezing cold out there. In the summertime, it's blistering hot. And they were training there year round in this barn. And they eventually came up with the name Caveman Combat. They started calling it the cave, like, oh, we're going to go train in the cave. And then it turned into Caveman Combat.
Nice.
And my dad decided to call it that. He's like, we need a name for our team. And, he and his buddies, they were going out and competing in jiu-jitsu tournaments.
Really?
Some of them were fighting MMA. And they had like a whole team that was started in my backyard, when I was a little kid. So yeah, they were training and they decided to call it Caveman Combat. And then my dad even had shirts made, which this is also kind of funny. I love drawing.
Yeah.
From the time I was a little kid, I've always loved drawing pictures. And so I was, maybe 7 years old or something. My dad was like, hey, I want you to draw me a caveman. And he was like, what better like logo for the shirts than to have my son draw like a rugged little caveman. So I drew a caveman for him as a little kid. I still got some shirts to this day. I should have wore one. Yes. And it's just the caveman on the front of the shirt, and it says Caveman Reality Combat and Conditioning. And on the back it says the original no holds barred fighter. And so it's funny, like they all wore these shirts whenever they would go out and compete. I think they might have even had like the rash guards made and stuff. So they would compete in that. And as I got older, I wasn't really into the martial arts when I was little. Like my dad tried to push me into wrestling. I wrestled like a couple seasons, I think. And
it didn't take, you didn't like it?
Yeah, dude. For me, like what I remember, the reason I didn't like it was because I was like perpetually confused. There was too many rules, too much structure for me, like them trying to explain to me like, how to get points as in wrestling, how to pin somebody. I was always kind of like, what? Like what? I remember just going in there and just feeling confused and lost, and like I didn't like it, And so eventually my dad pulled me out of it. I just wanted to.
How long did you do it?
I did it in kindergarten. For like a season in kindergarten, and then I get another season in first grade, I believe. And then he tried to get me back into it again when I was in second grade, when the season rolled around. And I think like after 1 or 2 practices, I think he saw like I just was not into it.
Right. Yeah.
So he pulled me out of it. And so anyways, like I said, when I was little, I really just liked skateboarding and riding my bike and things like that. And then it was around when I was 15, you know, when you're a kid, you don't even realize it, but you're always kind of subconscious, like you're watching your parents,
Of course.
right?
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, my dad, like he was my role model. And
Yeah.
so I'm watching this guy, he's training all the time. You know what I mean? Sometimes he'd come home with like a black eye or something from sparring. And, but he's, you know, this big, strong dude. And so
Yeah.
without even realizing it, even though I had all these other interests, it's like, there was a part of me that's like, okay, I got to be like this dude, you know, to be a real man,
100%.
you know?
And your
so
parents, we are subconsciously programming our children.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whether you like it, know it, or not.
Yeah.
And most parents aren't setting the best example for their kid.
Sure.
They're telling them stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but then they're doing something that's not congruent with what they're saying. All right.
Exactly.
So I wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
You're
And
perfect. Your story here, even though he didn't push you, you got to do this, pulled you out of wrestling, he was still programming you subconsciously by setting an example.
Exactly.
As a man.
Yes.
Love this.
And so, you know,
keep going.
And it's funny, like I remember even being a kid and going to like a friend's house or something and seeing their dad. And I always like naturally I always compared my dad to everyone. And my dad was like, oh, my dad could beat this guy up. My dad could beat this guy up. My dad could definitely beat that guy. Like I remember thinking that as a little kid. Like my dad's the toughest dude I know. He's the biggest, strongest guy, but he was also super kind to people and very, you know, respectful and stuff. So but yeah, once I got to be about 15, it started to pull me. I was starting to think about martial arts.
Yeah.
And I became interested in it. And so I remember I would go in the barn. Did
you ask him about it? Hey, Dad,
yeah,
I'm thinking about.
I would talk to him a little bit about it. I would ask him questions when he'd be watching the UFC and things like that. And then one day, I had a buddy who, this kid wasn't even a tough guy. He wasn't like a fighter or anything, but he was like a strong football player. And he threw me around in his living room a little bit. We just wrestled around.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was like I felt like I was tougher than this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe I even had the reputation of being tougher than him at our school. Cause I was a little bit more feisty.
Yeah.
And you know,
and they all probably knew your dad was this tough guy.
Yes. Yeah. Kids at school knew that I had this like big, strong dad too. And
the
so
Jack dad.
But then, yeah, my friend threw me around. And I remember I was like a little embarrassed about it. And I went home that night and I was like, I know my dad knows some jiu-jitsu and he can help me with this. And he held me down in what I didn't know was called side control, where he's on top of me in side control. And I just could not get this kid off me. So I said to my dad, I was like, how do I get out from this position? How do I get out from someone? And so he took me over to the mats, and this is in the evening. He was off work for the day lifting weights. He lifted weights every night in the evening. And so he took me on the mats and he showed me how to shrimp and how to like move my hips to get out from underneath somebody if someone's holding me down. And from that moment on, I feel like I never really stopped thinking about it. I was always kind of thinking about, okay, so there's always an answer in a fight, even when you're in a bad spot, you know, and then it wasn't long after that.
Did you get back into it with that other guy? Did you?
No, I never got him back.
What?
Never got that kid back. Yeah.
But he was a friend. Yeah.
Yeah. He was
just
a buddy.
Messing around.
Yeah. Yeah. He was just a buddy in high school. We were just playing around wrestling in his living room. And I thought I could like throw this kid around, but he actually threw me around.
Wow.
And I was humbled in that moment. I was like, okay, that's not
and so
how
this
that's
guy,
supposed to work.
do you remember his name?
Yeah, Cody Ryan. He doesn't even have social media.
Are you serious?
Yeah, this kid doesn't even have social media.
What's wrong with him?
I don't know. I haven't seen the guy in years. I don't even know what he's up to. He's just, some small town guy from Indiana.
So Cody, is it safe to say, was the one that sparked?
Not
Sloan,
totally. It was
bit?
my dad, but he definitely had like a little bit of an influence for sure when he kind of threw me around that day in his living room. And so I started, and I was like, my dad would hold mitts for me every now and then too. So he would have me put on the boxing gloves and he would do mitt work with me. And I liked that. I liked throwing punches and stuff. That was exciting to me. And so it wasn't too long after that I started training kind of consistently with my dad and his buddies every Saturday and Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. like clockwork. They were in there training in the barn. They were either doing boxing, they were doing jiu-jitsu, they were rolling. they were also every Saturday and Sunday morning, they would also do strength and conditioning though.
Yeah.
So it was like 2 hours.
Wow.
We would be out there just grinding.
Yeah.
And I started joining them. Every
And
weekend.
you were how old now? 15, 16?
I was about 15 when
Okay.
I started
Yeah,
going
freshman.
out there with them. Yeah. And yeah, I fell in love with it. And so, you know, as years went on, I kept on.
What'd you
I
love the
kept
most?
training.
Boxing, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu?
My first love, the first thing that excited me about fighting was punching someone in the face.
Yes.
That was it. I don't even know if you'd call it boxing. It was just like, I just wanted to hit people. You know, I
Yeah.
wanted to use my fists. There was something that felt very natural, but I also really liked strangling people.
Yeah.
Like from the beginning, like the two things that I remember excited me the most about fighting was the physical act of punching and choking people. I didn't really care about anything else. I didn't really care about arm locks. I
Yeah.
didn't care about kicking. I hated kicking. My dad was really trying to get me into leg kicks. He's like,
Yeah.
leg kicks are brutal. You can wreck a dude if you know how to throw a good
Yeah.
leg
Oh,
kick.
yeah.
And he would make me get on the heavy bag and throw leg kicks. And I remember it, like, for a long time, it, you know, pissed me off that my dad was making me do this, but because I just wanted to punch.
Right.
I just wanted
Yeah.
to box. And my dad was like, no, if you're gonna be out here training, you got to know how to kick somebody.